Blake Griffin has made his decision. When will Willie Warren make his? From the Opubco Studios at Britton and Broadway in Oklahoma City, I'm Mike Sherman, and this is the Bedlam Nation Conversation. I'm talking to OU beat writer John Helsley, and John, Willie Warren, I guess, is in the decision mode. How will he decide?
Well, Mike, he is in decision mode, and, I think he's got really a pretty tough decision here. One, he can come back, and the team next year will be his team. It'll be a different team, but he'll kind of be the guy, and they've got a chance to really go and do some good things. I think they'll be a top 20 team if he comes back. And then there's the other side that, he looks like a possible lottery pick right now. And so he's got to make that decision. He's got some flaws in his game, things that he could come back and work on. But then there's the flip side of that of a nice big payday in the NBA.
How do you think he's going to go about making that decision? Because on one hand, you go to ESPN, you play with their lottery machine. He's going 7 to the Knicks or 8 to Golden State. He's not any lower than 7th, 8th, and 9th there. Obviously, some NBA scouts like him a lot.
Absolutely. I think they like him for potential. He's a great athlete. He's got a great ability to drive and penetrate and either create offense for himself or someone else. He's got some things he's got to work on, though. I actually had a chat with a guy who scouts for the NBA the other day, and the one thing they don't like is his shot. His jump shot basically is from the shoulder. The guy I talked to the other day said in college you can get away with that because he's so quick that guys have to play off of him, and that won't be the case in the NBA. And so he might have to revamp his shot at the next level, which means I don't know how much time he would actually be on the floor next year. So does he want to sit and collect that paycheck? Does he want to come back to OU and work on his game, a la Blake Griffin? It's an interesting decision. So far, all indications are he wants to come back and do the thing with the Sooners one more time. I know Jeff Capel is, at least a little bit concerned, curious who might be in Willie's ear and his mom's ear pushing the NBA.
A year ago at this time, nobody in Oklahoma City had ever heard of Russell Westbrook. All of a sudden, he jumps up there and is taken with the 4th pick in the draft. I hear a lot of people compare the two and say Willie Warren's skill level might even be a little bit better. Not athletic ability, but skill level might be a little bit past Russell Westbrook. But you wrote earlier this week that Willie Warren's really making a lot of noises and saying some things that lead us to believe he wants to come back to Oklahoma.
Yeah, I think he does. And, as I mentioned before, this will be a team that he can really put his touch on. This year this was Blake Griffin's team. And, basically everything went inside out on that team. The ball needed to go through Blake's hands. That won't be the case next year. If you remember when Blake didn't play second half against Texas, what Willie Warren was able to do, kind of create and freelance a little bit. We saw that again against Kansas. That would be what Oklahoma will look like next year. I think that really suits Willie's style. And I think there's some appeal in that, he can come back and be the guy and really put his stamp on the team.
Willie Warren has until 10:59 Oklahoma time on Wednesday, April 29th to decide. If he decides to declare for the NBA draft, as long as he doesn't hire an agent, he can come back out. Now, Blake Griffin, John, he's got that same option right now, although it certainly looks like the consensus number 1 pick is going to stay in, which would create a scholarship opening for the Sooners. What are they going to do with that?
Well, they're out there right now looking around. There's some players who, for various reasons, either a few guys that waited to commit. Some guys nowadays won't sign a letter of intent just because they're concerned about coaching changes. We've seen that. We've seen players who have signed letters of intent who are now trying to get out of those letters because of coaching changes. I think maybe some of those guys are in play with Oklahoma. One guy close to home, Daniel Orton from McGinnis, would like to go to Kentucky perhaps. Don't know if they'll have a scholarship for him. Kansas, I know, is another school in the mix. But those schools are kind of iffy on whether they have a scholarship or not. So I think he's got Oklahoma on the back burner. And so it'll be interesting to see kind of how things develop for him to see if maybe Oklahoma doesn't come into the picture.
How would he fit in at OU next year? I know you say back burner, but it's kind of a tantalizing idea for OU, needing a postman. How do you think he'd fit in?
They've got one big guy coming, Keith Tiny Gallen. And then beyond that, though, you're talking about guys we've seen a little bit of, Ryan Wright, Orlando Allen. I think there's definitely a slot there for a high-quality guy to come in and play a lot along with Tiny Gallen or, alternating with him inside. I think there's definitely room for a quality big man to jump in there and play important minutes next year and really have an impact on the team.
You're watching the Bedlam Nation Conversation. We're talking to OU beat writer John Helsley. John, let's switch gears to football. The spring game is over. OU's wrapped up its spring drills for this year. And obviously, Sam Bradford is the guy. He's come back for another season. The question is the backup quarterback job. And how did Landry Jones look Saturday? And do we think he is sort of ready to take that next step when Sam Bradford leaves?
The public coming down on this is going to say incomplete. What we saw Saturday was really a rough Oklahoma offense. It was hamstrung from the beginning. Players missing due to injury like Chris Brown, DeMarco Murray, Jermaine Gresham sat out, a couple of offensive linemen. The rules really didn't play in their favor either, so it was really a dumbed-down version of the offense, and it really affected the way Landry Jones was able to get in and do some things. And so while the talk had been that he's really had a great spring and Kevin Wilson's been very pleased with his progress, we weren't really able to see that Saturday. So I would say we go into the fall kind of still very much unknowing what to expect if Sam Bradford would go down for a series, a half, or even a game. What we would be able to expect out of Landry Jones.
John, has spring football been much of an indicator, especially the spring game, been much of an indicator in the past as to who's going to be a pecking order for OU quarterback? I remember Jason White not playing very well. I remember Brent Worralls playing very well. I remember Bomar playing in some scrimmages where, it didn't look like he was a daredevil. It didn't look like he might win the job. Eventually he did. How important do you think that is? I'm
not sure it's important at all. You mentioned those guys. Tommy Grady was a spring sensation. We've seen running backs go off. It was interesting the other day. Trent Rattery, one of the backup tight ends, was having a big day, and we were remarking on. He was the story last spring, and then we didn't hear from him all last season. And so, spring games especially, I think, all the really serious work now goes on behind closed doors. We don't get to see any of the real scrimmages and what they're trying to accomplish. The spring game kind of is just almost like a walkthrough, I think, for fans, and so it's hard to get a good gauge. I don't think it's important at all to what we'll see come August and September.
John, one more football question. The NFL draft approaches a week from this Saturday. That's April 24th and 25th. It might be a little bit of a quiet first day, at least for the Sooners, especially first round. How do you look at their draft prospects?
It looks like Duke Robinson is still the guy that probably has the chance to go first among the Sooners. I would think maybe somewhere in the second round you might see him go. I've seen Pittsburgh mentioned along with Duke. They could use a young power-blocking guard. He fits what they like to do in their strong running game. I think he might be a good fit there, or anybody else that needs a good run blocker. That's kind of what he's known for. Oklahoma loved to run behind him with Chris Brown and DeMarco Murray and Adrian Peterson before that. Beyond that, you're talking Joaquin Iglesias, who is not a top-end burner like a lot of NFL types like, but he really showed up well in individual workouts. Some of the other things, the combine, they like the way he catches the ball. He's a tough receiver across the middle. Could be a good slot receiver in the NFL. So a team that's looking for that kind of a player could jump on him maybe late second, third round, somewhere in there. And beyond that, it gets a little interesting. Phil Lodeholt is a guy that really creates mixed emotions out there. Some people like him, some people don't at all. And then, down the road, you've got guys like Nick Harris, Lindy Holmes, John Cooper. Could be very late selections, maybe free agents.
Thanks, John.
Let's see it.